I'm Don. Today we're painting the skin of this Printomancer 3D bust, and I'll tell you two ways on how to maximize your airbrush and two ways on how to use your airbrush. Watch as we turn this beautiful bust into this. Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my studio. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. Before we paint, I have a new partner. It's PK Pro. It's the biggest hobby web store in Europe, and the website is loaded with a ton of everything I use here, including Winsor & Newton oil paints, of course Vallejo, Redgrass Games, and Harder&Steenbeck, and some other awesome paint brands and tools that you will need for the hobby. So do shop your hobby needs at PK Pro because I get a commission whenever you shop. Also, top tier patrons will get a 5% discount at PK Pro. Today I'm using my Harder&Steenbeck KYIV Infinity Dark Airbrush. You could help like the children at Omatdit Hospital because all sales proceeds of this airbrush will go to the children at that hospital at Ukraine. Links on how to purchase this airbrush and try to help the children at Ukraine at the description below. There are two ways to airbrush. One is to thin your paints and use a lower pressure around 20-ish psi, or in this case, in this video, use a higher psi, higher pressure around 25 to 30-ish psi, and use air paints. Do not thin your paint. Personally, I would recommend learning how to thin your paints for the airbrush, but for people new to the airbrush or new to airbrushing, you could try this method in which we're just adding a bit of flow improver to help with the tip drying, and then we jack up the air compressor pressure to around 30-ish psi. I'm using a 0.2 needle. You could use a 0.4, and then you don't really have to thin the air paints. Air paints would be the Vallejo Mecha Colors, Game Air Paints, and Model Airs. If you are new with airbrushing and you're just starting out trying to learn airbrushing, I recommend that you try this method in which you're not thinning the air paints but learn how to control the trigger. If you push down, that would be airflow, and if you pull back, that would be paint flow. Try to learn how to control the airflow because it is essential when you're painting the details and the highlights of your miniatures. You see in the video we're painting elf skin tone. This is basically the pre-highlight color of our skin, and I'm not pushing down the airflow to the max. I am just practically like halfway pushing down the airflow so that there's little air coming out of the airbrush, and then I'm not pulling the airbrush or the lever or the trigger backward so that I get smaller amounts of paint. Now we brush paint and fine-tune the highlights and shades of our skin painting. I highly recommend you use a Redgrass Wet Palette. They are one of the best, if not the best in the market. I'm using the smallest one, which is a budget-friendly Painter Light Wet Palette. You could get this at PK Pro, and I have an affiliate link so that I get a bit of commission if you buy from PK Pro. I am using thinner medium to add transparency to my paints, but of course you could just over water or water down your paints, much like the master painters, if you need to glaze or add transparency to your paints, but I love using mediums. I feel using mediums give me a bit more control when trying to apply glazes. In this video, you'll see I'm slowly building up the highlights via stippling, glaze stippling or glaze layering because I added a bit thinner medium to add more transparency, and I'm stippling lighter colors on top of each other. And then I'm slowly building up the highlights so that we get smoother transitions. Do not rush this process if you're trying to aim a display level quality painting, especially of the skin. This will take you only roughly around an hour or two, especially if you know where to paint the highlights. It's just a matter of slowly building up the layers. You may use a hair dryer to speed up the drying time and then apply more layers as you build up the highlights. Again, you could just use water to water down your paints to add transparency and to do glazes, but I have a ton of videos on how to use mediums for glazing and stippling. Once you are happy with your highlights, we then need to add more shades and shadows to our miniature. Today I'm using inks and transparent paints, of course all Vallejo. Vallejo skin wash is really nice, and violet ink is great for recesses. Transparent red is perfect to add a bit of red tone to the skin. These paints are very saturated, so we're adding a bit of thinner medium. You could also use glaze medium to add more transparency to the paints and soften them up. Similar to the painting of the highlights, it will take you around an hour or maybe two to build up the shades and shadows of your bust painting, but it will be worth it. A ratio of around 2 parts ink and 1 part thinner medium would be perfect, because if you do a 1:1, it might be too transparent. It will take you longer to build up the shadows. At this point of the painting process, I'm basically just flip-flopping from adding shades and adding highlights until I like the result. I actually added more inks to the model, but I did not record it on film because it might be boring for you guys. It is actually easier to use oil paints to add shades at this point of the painting process, but we'll do that in a separate video. Now, before our golden lemon reveal, I would just like to thank all my patrons for making this channel very much possible. Also, the 24-minute really long version of this video is now available at Patreon. Now for our golden lemon reveal. Basically, you saw in this video that you could paint with the airbrush without thinning. You just need to add a bit of flow improver and learn to control the airflow so that you could paint really nice highlights and details. Lastly, always try to fine-tune your painting, airbrush painting with brush painting via more shades and highlights to really tune down and create more contrast to your painting. That's it, Pansit. That's it, we're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos!